All right. Um, so, hello again. And we will be now having an interview session with Dr. Monty Satiadarma, who is actually, I believe, a psychologist by training, correct?
Yes.
Yes. And he actually, today I'm going to be interviewing him about the issues of delivering education, particularly in Indonesia, but probably more, I hopefully, during the COVID pandemic. I'm hoping to direct sort of my questions so that I will be able to elicit as productive an answer from Monty as possible. But to start, I'd just like to make a few observations after having read some of the issues that you raised in your conference synopsis. Um, I think that and I'll just refer to them in with some parallels with Japan, because one of the things I think with COVID-19 is that regardless of whether you're, of course, a wealthy country or a developing state, school education has been impacted almost across board in similar ways. Higher education in particular, of course, this is a big money-making machine internationally. So I think that we can treat it a different way. But in any case, um, I think one of the things, of course, that came into the rescue was these sort of online Zoom meets and all these other platforms, which pretty much forced a lot of classrooms to go online and not have in-person sort of contact. Japan at the moment is going through the fourth significant surge of COVID, as you know, and there's been a lot of confusion, and particularly in the universities, because the Ministry of Education, when our academic year started, uh, basically recommended, or rather asked all the universities to go face to face. And then came the surge, and now there are many, many issues from students having problems of access to Wi-Fi, or all the stress of having online classes, to the extent that we've had for the past year this Facebook group with hundreds and hundreds of university faculty discussing how university education should be uh, under the pandemic. And I think apart from responding to not being able to go face to face, I think there's another movement coming out, which is to sort of kind of fundamentally alter what university educations are about, as well as also explore the online experience as not a replace sort of a supplement or replacement for the for in face-to-face education, but also a completely alternative way of delivering courses. So that's one of the things that I think that's come out from the COVID situation. But the questions I think that is really, really important is about what to do with the classrooms or courses that really need face to face. And you mentioned some of the art therapy courses where you really need to be present physically. And Osaka University actually has a similar problem because we are very, very strong in engineering, medical sciences, and basically, and these all need to be taking place in labs. And so, apart from the humanities, have a different issue, but I think when it comes to face, I think, do you think that uh, we will go back somehow to having sort of physical class in face-to-face classes, or with the way that things are beginning to become hybrid, um, we could also in some ways explore a different model in case of these courses and classes that really need physical contact. And you don't need to answer this specifically, but I was just sort of drawing on some of the issues confronted by Osaka, the engineering professors. So perhaps you'd like to sort of elaborate what the situation is in Indonesia and what are significantly sort of very different from the Japanese experience, or what might sort of speak more broadly about what is happening with situations also in Southeast Asia.
Okay. Well, that is actually the greatest concerns of us in the world. I think it is not only in Southeast Asia, but also in all over the world. Of course, in Japan, and I'm now in Osaka. I have experienced the government policy of Japan about closing all the public facilities during this Golden Week and so forth. And then they will extend until the end of May, and probably they will extend more. And then there are some concerns about the Olympic Games of Japan. As far as educational theory, principles, philosophy, we indeed can deliver the education by online approach. However, there are conditions that we cannot deny, that we have to work on site and on hands working. For example, what about the surgical? What about the surgery, medical? And I personally am from clinical psychology. As far as educational counseling and general counseling, yes, of course, we can do it through online approach. But psychotherapy, family psychotherapy, for example, it is very, very difficult to do it online. This is what we are concerning about, educating the students on how to do it. And normally, we used to do, like, for example, for interview, we can do it in tandem interview with the supervisors being there. And then when doing therapy, for example, like hypnotherapy and art therapy and many kind of therapy, we cannot do it just by online. The students cannot really experience the personal contact with the individual, and especially the emotional contact with the individual. And of course, in psychology, we are concerning also about the observation of the movement, the body movement of a person, and of course the atmosphere. It is so different online. Of course, we are dealing with what they call it the new normal, which my concern is rather abnormal as a social beings. Although we can have contact with through the Zoom, or we are using Zoom and MS Teams and so forth, but still it is very difficult to deal with it. It is very difficult in the long run to deal with it. We can study the basic principles on that, but we cannot really implement the practical applications on that. We cannot have the real training on that. That is the greatest concerns. And I think it is not only in Southeast Asia, but all over the world. Yeah.
I mean, what do you think that, of course, at some point we'll all get vaccinated, and physical classes would resume. But at the moment, I think a lot of the issues are focused on the negative impact for the students in particular, about having to be in small, in some cases very small apartments, or having a very noisy sort of house, so forth, and not being able to secure a place where they can actually concentrate on courses and so on. But since you do psychology, I was wondering, once we go back, do you sort of see any sort of psychological impact in maybe in going back again? And for some students, it will be for the first time, particularly for university students.
Yes.
They've never been on campus, or if they have, it's been very limited. And all of a sudden, they're sort of, having to adjust to what was the old norm. But for them, it would be quite a new experience of being with other people in a huge classroom sometimes.
Yes, of course. We have to get adjusted with the new norm. And we have to readjust again with the new classrooms. And we probably have been adjusted with this new, this online system for some people. And then we're not really well skillful in using the online instruments, and we're not really adjusted yet with the online materials, and suddenly we have to get adjusted again with the offline classroom, the new offline classroom. We have tried in Indonesia. We have tried classrooms, offline classrooms in numbers of schools, and I personally am not very sure, but there's some information about the increase of the cases after the offline classroom. This is the concerns. Of course, we don't know where the sources are. It could be from the students, it could be from the teacher, it could be from whoever travels into school by using public transportation. And we certainly don't know how do people get contaminated, and especially with this fourth wave in Japan, for example, it probably get a fourth wave in Indonesia and in other places of the world. And this is, we have to follow the very tight protocols here and there, which is not very easy for people to follow. This we also need to get used with the what we call it the new normal life system, but it hasn't been really normal for many people. Although there are conditions where people are considered like they're so they don't care about that. There are people in Indonesia, I don't know in Japan. I think most people in Japan, the law-abiding society people are very concerned about that. But there are people in Indonesia, they are not really care, and they are having euphoria after the vaccination. This is also what we're concerned about. Of course, it is understandable that the decision of the Minister of Education that we cannot really entirely depends on online learning entirely. Of course, we understand about that. Like I said, that there are conditions we have to implement the practical applications. We cannot really just stay in the room in the book, reading the books and between the four walls, and not implementing it in the society, not implementing it in the reality. That is the greatest concern. Now, how do we implement the reality? And especially, it has to be taken precautions. For example, for the medical students, and of course for the counseling, we know that people are wearing masks, people are wearing shields, and especially in the counseling, and but the contamination spreads out in the people interaction, in human interaction. Perhaps the one of the best solution, if we have the good vaccine, which we don't really know yet which one it is, because there have been people being vaccinated yet being recontaminated by that. So we still don't know about that. We have to wait and see, and taking precautions at the best that we can.
How long do you think, there's a question here from the audience, that are there any indicators that show with the new normal learning becomes more like an abnormal? Meaning I would presume that this online would once again be the sort of relegated to the less than face-to-face type of learning.
Well, generally speaking, in psychology, it is considered normal for people to get adjusted between 6 and 9 months. The adjustment ability of people, that's quite normal. So let's say at the end of the 2021, we are returning to the offline, and I'm hoping we are returning to the offline so we can get along and we can mingle in the IAFOR, of course. I long for the IAFOR, spending time together in Tokyo, for example. But it takes about several months, normally 6 to 9 months, when people get adjusted in the education. They have, let's say they have not really forgotten, but they need to readjust it with the new system, with the distancing, whether they can shake hands, whether they can hug, whether they can say hello, and how much distance they can.
But I had a question to follow up with that, what you just said about people adjusting, and going back to, I think the online version of, of teaching. Do you think that we've actually in the past year and a half, perhaps, nurtured a model by which online will stay for some things?
Well, or this is so far that we can do. This is so far that we can do. If there is any possibility for other kind of online, probably it could be better. We do have to utilize the technology, the best technology we can do. I'm considering about how to deliver, how to we evaluate, and how we conduct the program. But still, there are limited numbers. This online system is is a form of instrument of education. It's a single instrument of education, but education itself consists of various kinds of instruments of education. There's not only teaching, not only philosophical, not only delivering in communication, and this is communication device. Direct interaction is necessary for human life, and the social deprivation creates stress in psychology. As a matter of fact, last year in October, there was a congress in here, also in IAFOR, considering about the social deprivation in various kinds of the world, including research in Japan, in America, in Mexico, or in Brazil, and Latvia, I think. So social deprivation becomes number one in a social interaction, not only in education, in various kind of human interpersonal relations. So this device, online device of communication, helps people when they cannot communicate one another directly, but now it becomes the main device for people to communicate. Even, for example, the suggestions of the Japanese government itself, for example, when you get interacted with one another, for example, in gathering, you reduce as much as possible to talk. People gather to talk, but they're
told not to talk.
Not to talk. So do we have to use sign language? I don't know about this.
I mean, I think the Japanese, the way that the Japanese cases are spreading is quite indicative
Yes.
of, because it spreads mostly in izakaya, these like drinking
Yes.
establishments and
Yes.
restaurants where people are talking. And it's not really in schools or anywhere. And the Osaka University's recent spike in the students getting infected is very much the case of not happening on campus, but with the new year, new academic
Right.
year,
Right.
students going out drinking.
Right. Right.
So yes, I think yes. I mean, I'm not suggesting that this would be. Uh, this is not a desirable norm at all. I've had students come to my apartment, which has relatively high ceilings, and they felt like their lung was expanding because they could breathe.
Mm-hmm.
So I do completely understand. But in terms of the impact of to the overall impact of COVID on sort of education, and going back to my original observation about sort of universities or education systems changing, do you think that it is a kind of a kind of a crisis event that would also prompt some fundamental changes in the way, in particular, universities are organized, or how they uh, uh, teach, or as an institution, particularly with this the particular models of the university with the campus and so on and so forth. Do you think this might have opened up an opportunity, a different type of opportunity, where university higher education, particularly in like international collaboration and so forth, it's much easier to do it online on some things, so that there might be an element where the online, just like the open university or the online courses that are now sort of staying, would be a permanent part of uh, the way university provides an
Yes,
intellectual
for the
environment.
open university, for the online university, there
Mm,
probably will be no problem with that.
mm,
And what I found from my personal experience, for example, for the assignment of the students to create, um, normally they have to present something and to present in front of the class about their findings and so forth. Now they they created in the form of like filming, virtual. And then by this activity, there have been um, increasing interaction between one student to another to create the virtual presentation, even though even they can submit it into YouTube, for example.
mm,
And
mm, mm, mm.
this is the new skill, and I think new skills for students using this for virtual filming, where they are able to create short captions, filmings, and they become more creative. This is also increasing their creativity, and I think this is very important in our education and in developing the education courses, one of the courses of the students. We didn't use this before. We use only, for example, slides presentation, but now we use virtual presentation. This is very important way they,
Mm.
for example, the students of psychology, they didn't really know about how to do this, and then so they get together with the computer, with the IT students,
Mm.
and this cross discipline um, of students is very good.
Yes, I mean, I think it's this is I know that our faculty also are learning a lot of skills
Yes, yes.
to be, but they seem to be want to simulate at least, or kind of approximate the live learning experience by doing it online, which seems to put a lot of stress
Mhm.
in terms of material, whatever. But I was wondering if there is perhaps an evolution in the way that online classes, as you say, with the Open University cases or others, where this is not to be treated in the same way as the face-to-face courses, but they're just, done differently. And I was wondering if there would be some sort of a norm for online education, which might stay after this pandemic. It just seems like a waste when, as you say, there are some opportunities. At least from my perspective, when I do international relations, it's actually quite convenient because we can invite people to lecture with less carbon footprint
Yes.
and less money.
Yes. Yes.
So in that way, this opened up this sort of virtual global intellectual community of intense interaction. I am not saying that this is the ideal thing, but so in a way, maybe, and also distance learning being somewhat what used to be a tool for increasing equity, access to education. I also think that the quality of that distance learning, I'm not so would perhaps improve and stay for as a way of not a supplementary tool, but rather a mainstay for example, for countries like Indonesia or lots of parts of, even Japan. It's like really, you have a lot of islands, and we already have a problem of, huge concentration of people in Tokyo. And so even sort of the political economy of learning is, I think, might change. I don't know, but I'm not so sure if it's desirable. But what would be your views on this?
In my own university, in the Department of Psychology, we didn't teach, for example, meta-analysis or research review in the undergraduate until later semester. But now they have explored that because there is no other way if they want to write papers and there is no opportunity to have direct contact with clients. And I believe in the medical department they do that as well. So there are technical abilities, there are increasing abilities among the students, for example, for doing that meta-analysis. And we used to think that this is too difficult for them to do that, but actually it is not too difficult for them to do that. We realize that they are capable of doing that, so we can teach them even from the earlier possibility in the educational program. So one of that is the cross-discipline, and then second, the advanced materials. Of course, we have some limited numbers of networking, and then that is the university and the faculty has to work on that. For example, yesterday we were talking about the program, the collaborative online interactive learning program, which is very interesting if universities can get interacted one another. And I think IAFOR has been implementing this kind of discipline for a long period of time, from since 2009, and this is what Professor Picken had been thinking about before, about the cross-discipline scientific concerns all over the world. So to open more possibilities for people to understand. Yesterday we were talking about the COIL, the UMAP, and so forth, to increasing the self-awareness of people, of the different cultures, of different, they said, why do people do what they do, for example? this interactive online learning all over the world opens more the possibility, even though there are challenges about synchronized and non-synchronized time zones, but that is what we can resolve the problem of our time zones.
That's very true. I mean, the time zones are very interesting. Who you can connect with at what time. Okay, thank you. I'm so sorry. I had to sort of go and get my takubing.
Okay.
Anyway, so we're going to wrap up our our talk right here, and we're going to move straight to the networking session, which I have been instructed to. There is a net. Okay, so there'll be some slides being shared.